And good morning, everyone. All right, so today I'm doing something different than the usual. I'm going to do kind of a playthrough, walkthrough discussion why I like Conflict of Heroes. And I've done the actual board game before. Like, if you look through my channel, you'll find that there's been some like an unboxing. I even did one where I put miniatures on top of the counters and made kind of a crossbred miniatures board game version. I've done lots of things with this game. Really, really like it. However, I did not like the computer version. So the only reason I'm coming back to this now is because there is, by the company that's put this out, Matrix Games, they have another recently put out popular board game to computer. I think it came out February of 2014, and that was Lock and Load Heroes of Stalingrad. Now, Lock and Load is a game system. I say system because it has lots of expansions. Lock and Load Publishing has like that Hero system, Heroes of the Gap, and all these different games that kind of fit at this squad leader type of level. Then they move up to platoons with their nations at war. So they have a lot of really, really good games. I've always really liked Conflict of Heroes. And unfortunately, they don't have a demo of the Lock and Load game for me to decide, like, oh, do I want to put my money out to that, or do I want to stick with Conflict of Heroes? Now, this is the demo. So a lot of times, this might be someone's first introduction to, say, a war game. So instead of paying like, hey, I don't know, my wife paid a lot of money to get the Conflict of Heroes board game. She got it as an anniversary present. And so sometimes people don't have the ability to shell out that kind of money. So the video games are a little bit cheaper. You can get this right now at Matrix Games. This or the Heroes of Stalingrad, the Lock and Load one, they're $40. But I wouldn't know which one to put my money out on unless I got a chance to play the demo, because I've never played the board game version of the Lock and Load. So let's say you're new to Conflict of Heroes. If you search around YouTube, you're going to find lots of gameplay type footages for Conflict of Heroes and for the Lock and Load game. So why am I talking about Lock and Load when I have Conflict of Heroes pulled up? Well, the Conflict of Heroes computer version came out before, a couple years before the Lock and Load game, and it had good reviews and bad reviews. Good reviews is that it was a pretty good representation of the physical board game. Some of the negative reviews I saw were about the graphics. And there's some other things I'll explain. And so when I downloaded the version and played the demo here, I agreed. It didn't capture the feel of the board game. So I was really, really disappointed, and so I never picked it up. Well, when the Lock and Load came out, the Heroes of Stalingrad, if you go to matrixgames.com and you look these up, and you'll see pictures and screenshots and stuff, the Heroes of Stalingrad, from what I can tell, looks and plays almost exactly, if not exactly, other than bugs, but plays exactly like the board game. The counters look the same, as if someone just counter punched them right from the counter sheets and are playing. And I didn't get that with Conflict of Heroes. So I was like, oh man, but I really like the board game. So when I went and dug a little bit deeper into some of these reviews, I found that you can customize this Conflict of Heroes, bypass all the fancy stuff they included for the computer game, and make it play exactly like the board game. And that made me come back to it, because then you might be saying, well, then why don't you just play the board game? Because sometimes I don't want to pull all the pieces out. Things come up, interrupt. I gotta leave the board game half played out somewhere on a table, and then I gotta clear the table for dinner or something. Whereas on the computer, bam, you need me to do something, honey? Okay, no problem. Pause, and I'm running and doing a chore. I can't do that with the board game, but I can do that with the computer game. Plus, with multiplayer here, I can find opponents across the country if I needed to. I haven't tried multiplayer yet because it's just a demo. I don't know how many people want to do multiplayer on the demo, if it works. But anyhow, so I thought, let me come back and give this a try. And let me tell you, second time is a charm. Almost 2 years later, back in the demo, playing it just like the board game experience. It's great. It's great. So let's take a look. I'm going to skip the tutorials because the tutorials play some of the rules for the default settings of the game and not necessarily the board game. So I'm already familiar with the game, so I'm going to go right to the scenarios in Awakening the Bear. So this computer version now has three releases. There's the first one, which is Awakening the Bear, which does kind of like Operation Barbarossa, Germany invading Russia. Then they have one, it's kind of an interim. It's, I can't think of the name, but it's basically like the Ghost Panzers, Ghost Division, which is kind of, I think, was right between the operation, this first one, Awakening the Bear, and then their second full release, which was Storms of Steel. And then Storms of Steel covers kind of like 1943, which was mostly to cover the battles of Kursk, so lots of tanks. I own the Storms of Steel board game because I like Kursk. I love the idea of the huge tank battles. So this is Awakening the Bear. They don't have a demo for the expansion or for the Storms of Steel. So anyway, these are scenarios from the first game, Awakening the Bear. So this was like 1941-42. So the first couple missions, they all start out real easy, where it's mostly like infantry, and then as you progress, the game system works on kind of like a learn by programmed instruction. So they start you off with simple concepts like just infantry, and then eventually it's like infantry and some of the command cards that manipulate the game a little bit, and then eventually it's like infantry and a couple vehicles. So it's a really slow progression through the rules. So these first couple scenarios are all about infantry engagement. So we're going to go ahead and snag up partisans here and talk about how you can make your computer version match almost exactly to the computer version. I know I talk too much. So we're just going to pop in. Just pop in, man. So I'm not changing anything. Default layout. Alright, so when you come in, this does not look like the board game. For this particular mission, because I have to deploy some troops in the beginning, I don't get to manipulate the gameplay experience yet to match the board game. One of the things I can do, though, outside of the game is tell it to use just plain old two-dimensional maps. They have three-dimensional maps that have the trees that pop up, and then the game takes on kind of a miniatures tabletop experience type of a look, which is okay, but again, I want to replicate that board game experience I love. So I'm choosing to use regular two-dimensional maps. So I'm going to go ahead and I get to pre-deploy some units. I get to deploy a couple German rifle squads and some light machine gun squads. So let's see. What's nice about this particular mission is you can play this over and over and over again, and every time is going to be a slightly different experience, because where you can place your troops, how you want to get to the victory location, and then sometimes where the Russians deploy their troops. And it's hidden movement on their part, so you really don't know exactly where they will always be, but the goal is the same. Get to this center point. So I'm going to put one of my rifle squads here, and this little arrow tells me what their hex facing will be when they pop into the board. In this game, it uses unit facing, because even infantry in this game have a flank, so if you hit them from behind, they're a little bit easier to take out. So I'm going to pop in facing this direction. So this is the other thing I've done to help replicate that board experience. I don't use their 3D models of vehicles and infantry. They're not bad, but they're not the board game experience. I'm not going to say they're bad. They're not bad. They're not good. But for some reason, they just don't give me the data I need when I play a board game. And we'll talk about the counters here in a minute. I gotta deploy my other rifle squad. I'm gonna put a rifle squad here so they can start kind of coming up through the woods to use cover, and then I'm gonna place my light machine gun squad here and my other one here, mostly because I've played this a bunch of times. I want to try and get some guys up into the trees for defense so they can lay some cover fire down here, and then move some dudes along here. I should have put them down here, but anyway, just kind of move through to take that. Tips, I don't read tips. Tips. Alright, so what I'm going to do is change camera view. There. Now I have the top-down view of where I'm checking out the board game. There's my hexes, a little blurry, J, Ks. But there. To me, I've found the settings, and this to me is the board game replication I like. They have a lot of zoom levels. which is outstanding because on the bigger maps, you can pull back and see a lot more of the area. It makes it easier for zooming around to see all the map that you have explored or where you have troops at. Or I can zoom in. I can see my counters. Now let me show you the 3D models. Oop, that wasn't what I wanted. Cancel that. Where is it? Right here. 3D units. Takes a second to load. But this is what the 3D units look like. I mean, they're not terrible, but it's just in order to see kind of their statistics, you have to hover the mouse over it and read the statistic bar that pops out. So it's the same information. It's just that as a board game player, I like having the information on my counters. And see, they're not terrible. And when you look down from above, then it kind of loses some of that 3D. So if you change your view, then there you are. Then they stand out a little bit better as 3D. You know, so like I said, it's not terrible, but if let's say there's a game out there called Operation Barbarossa by a company called Zvezda. It's a blending of a board game and miniatures, and that would remind me of that style of game, playing my 3D miniatures on top of these 2D maps, which is fine. But because I like the Conflict of Heroes, I know I'm babbling now, but for me, this makes a good game. It is, it really does, because I know the counters, I understand the data, I can look, make decisions on what I see, and play it out. I don't have to hover over every single item to read what they have. I just look at their counter. Okay, so now we gotta start moving troops. Down here in the lower left hand corner tells me like who's won initiative. So the Germans have initiative. I have 5 turns to try and get victory points, capture this location, and win the game. So I play the game using the traditional board game setup, which means I don't have persistent action points. The basic default computer game comes with what are called persistent action points, where every unit at the beginning of a turn is assigned a random amount of action points. Well, you can even have it set to a specific number, 7, which might even be the default. In the board game, unless you use the random action point rule, every unit gets 7. I play random action points and I don't play persistent because that replicates the board game experience that I enjoy. So what I have to do is decide which unit I want to activate first, because once I activate a unit, that's my sole activated unit for the turn until I'm done using his action points. With persistent action points, you can swap at any time between a unit, and that's something we can get into later. But again, to replicate that board game experience, don't use persistent action points. So I'm going to go ahead and start moving infantry. So I'm going to move this guy here. So I look, he's got this little number 11 here. If you can't see it on the counter, it does put it down here in his status bar. So I have 11 action points. That's a lot. If the average is 7, and the random rule is you roll 3 dice 6, keep the highest number and the lowest number. So to get 11 action points means I really rocked my roll. So I'm going to go ahead and start moving. Now this green tells me which direction they're facing. So I want to be facing the enemy. So I'm just going to move. You can move on the half square, which is nice. I've triggered an enemy. He was waiting to attack me. He didn't hit me though. Let's move here and get into some cover. Alright, now this is where the fun really starts. Because I know the game, this red 2 is your anti-infantry strength. So I roll 2 dice 6 and add that number, and it has to beat their defense number, which is red defensive numbers here. Yeah, Eddie, could you just show us a counter real fast? Yeah, let me show you a counter. Hold on. Oh, snap. That's not what I wanted to do. I accidentally told it to change facing while I was trying to rotate this thing. Crap. Now I gotta rotate even more. Hold on. Oh, that's better. Okay. So real quickly on the counter, this black number here tells you how many action points it takes to fire. This red 1 tells you how many action points it takes as a default to move into a clear open hex. This red number 2 is your firepower against red defense. This blue is your bonus firepower against blue defense. So red is usually for infantry type units. Blue is for armored targets like tanks. And then here's your defense. This top number represents your defensive value for the flank, meaning someone's shooting you from behind or the side here. And the red means it's within this front green arc. Alright, so when I look here, let's put the board back how I want it. Awesome possum. So when I look at this Russian unit, their forward defense, this bottom one, is a 12. So I would have to roll 12 on 2 dice 6 in order to damage the unit. But they're in woods, so that means they get a defensive bonus. Like if I hover over woods here in the lower right, it tells me that's a +2 defense. So I got to roll a 14. Now because I have a 12, or I mean a +2 bonus to my defense, I would have to roll 12 on 2 dice 6. So the computer is pretty generous, because I gotta change my facing back. It tells me it's an impossible shot, that with all the defensive bonuses and things, I can't hit that unit. So that's not gonna happen. I would have to move closer and try to get like an adjacent firepower bonus. I might have to pull up a light machine gun. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have these 4 action points go unused. I'm going to put these guys on a defensive, well, can't really say defensive because once I stop using them, they're done. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave them right here for the next turn. So I'm going to end their activation for this turn. Before the turn advances through all these clocks, all my units have to act. So these guys were shot at. Something happened to them, which caused, can I scroll up here? What happened? Marked as used. I think the Russians must have played a card. I missed it while I was talking, but they caused that unit. They have a card called Minefield, which will cause a unit to use all of its action points so they can't move. And that's probably what happened here. The Russians probably played a minefield on my light machine gun unit, so I can't do anything. Alright, but we're going to move this light machine gun unit up into the action. So I'm going to click it. Yeah, boy. Now they only got 5 action points. That sucks. So this is one of the things that people in general did not like about the board game. They said those action points are too gamey. It's too random. Well, that's why you can set it for the default of 7 action points to do stuff. For me, I like the random because that, for me, helps simulate kind of the fog of war, that command paralysis. Some units are more prepared to act than others. Alright, so if I take my machine gun, now he's got a 4 for his anti-personnel attack strength. So I would roll 2 dice 6 plus 4 versus his 12 plus the 2 for the defense of the woods. So I have a chance to hit. I can modify my attack roll by spinning these things called caps. I'm not going to go too much into caps, but basically caps represent your command influence over the battlefield. Like you're sending more supplies, better ammunition, better equipment to a specific point of the battlefield to help influence it. Kind of like in some games where they have a separate squad leader counter that travels with the units to influence their combat rolls. I'm going to do that from the bird's eye view of a general. I'm going to influence their dice roll by adding +2 to the dice roll, which increases my odds from 27% to 58% to hit the unit. So now here, let me show you why this game really shines now as replicating the board game. You can turn on the dice camera. So I have a camera attached to my dice tower that I use for gaming, and when I click to attack a unit, look at this. I get to take my dice, drop them in the tower, and then it counts the little pips. I rolled an 8. That's cool for me. Now, if the computer handles all the dice rolling, then it's just a, click, click, click. and the game moves pretty quick. Yes, the game does slow down when I physically roll the dice, but oh man, that's so cool. That to me is ultimate bridging the gap between the computer game and the board game. Is awesome. So anyway, they are now out of action points. Now what's cool is, because this replicates the board game without that persistent APs, if I needed to, I could have, there's different things you can do. You can interrupt an enemy's phase, because what happens is every time I do an action, whether it's moving, then the enemy gets to move. We go back and forth. So if the enemy, say, popped out here somewhere and I had line of sight with my machine gun unit, even though I had another active unit marked as active, I could have taken a kind of an interrupting opportunity fire with another unit, but it sacrifices all of that unit's potential APs to do one action. So this, you have to really think about, when you replicate the board game experience, how you're going to move your troops. So this is just a rifle unit. We're going to go ahead and start rushing him. I'm not going to attack because yeah, they just don't have the APs. I got one AP left, so we're going to start charging this here. They might die, but I'm going to start charging this point here, and they'll re-rally. Let me look at my cards here. Hasty defense. Because they're rushing out in the open, I'm going to put a hasty defense on them, which gives them a little bit of defense in case someone attacks. And since they're damaged, they could rally, and then that damage effect would go away. I just don't have anybody else to press the attack right now to try and eliminate that. So all my units have done something. So we're going to pass the turn. Got some movement going on over here. I think all he did was rotate. I can't see what his damage is. Every time you damage a unit, they get this random damage counter, but I can't see what's happened to the enemy. So I don't know if they've lost firepower or what's happened. So let's see. He's in a hasty defense. We're going to go ahead and we're going to activate this rifle unit. We're going to try and move them forward. Now, see, here comes the Russians. They just moved a unit forward. So they can just come right up through this woods and take that point. I'm going to go here. Now, the only reason I can see that unit is because, see, some of these guys have line of sight. And if I wanted, I could take an opportunity action with the light machine gun and try to pin them down. But this is a race to the victory point. Check this out. Oh, they're going to be sitting right out in the open. Yeah, that was risky, because I don't know how many action points they have. So they got pinned here. I have an action damage, and basically their movement. Let's see. It says right here they're foot nerved or foot unnerved. Basically, I don't see any penalties to their stats, but any unit that takes 2 damage is destroyed. So even though they're still combat effective, if someone was to shoot them again, they would be removed from the game. So they're kind of in a risky spot. So what do I got? I got mines. I can take 1 action at no cost. So I'm going to go ahead and on this unit, they're highlighted, I'm going to take an action. And what they're going to do is try to rally.
Für das Vaterland.
Now, for the rally, the computer automatically rolled the dice for me. But they succeeded in rallying. So I had to roll 7, so the computer rolled virtual dice and said that they succeeded in a rally. So they're still alive. Alright, now we're going to take this light machine gun unit. Oh, I have to end their activation. End it. And
Achtung!
with these guys here, he's got 7 action points. See, now this would be the smart one to kill right here, because I have a real good chance of hitting it. They have a potential to rally, but because they're out in the open, they're easier to hit. So I'm going to spend some caps. Here's a cool thing about caps. You get your full set of caps back at the beginning of each turn. So it's okay to spend them for things like more action points to move, Because what I can do is, if I kill this unit, I can give this guy some action points from my command reserve and move him into that hex. So let's shoot this guy. Let's roll some dice in the tower. Oh, this wasn't a good roll. Only a 6. It might miss. Oh no, it did. It was enough to damage him. Alright, so now we're going to do it again. Now you have to spend your bonus points before you shoot. So let's try that one more time. Alright. So I already rolled before I told it to fire. I rolled an 8. So fire. Alright, there we go. Now, I have 3 action points left, and it only takes 2 to fire, so I'm going to go ahead and try to shoot into this wood, so I'm going to spend 2 more caps.
Ja, Kamerad.
I'm burning through my caps this turn, but it's okay. So we want to roll high, roll high. Oh, rolled a 3. That didn't roll very well. So that's the way the dice roll. And he's only got 1 action point left, so I'm going to go ahead and just end his turn anyway. It's kind of a waste of 1 point, but it takes 2 to fire, 1 to move, but I don't want to move him out in the open right now. He's got a nice commanding view of the open terrain, so we're just going to end it for him. Now, I am going to try and move him up. I'd like to get him into this woods, because then he would have not only captured the point, but then he'd be in the safety of the woods. So let's see if I can highlight him real quick. Check this out. I'm going to go, because it takes, I can only give him 1, because it takes about 1 extra AP for movement to move in. So it would be 1 point to move here, and it would take 2 to move into the woods. So I'm going to save one of these action points. I'm just going to give him 1. And I'm going to move him right here, facing the woods.
Nach Moskau!
So I've captured the point. I'll have to wait a turn before I can move him into the woods. But now we're defending that point. We're getting victory points. So we're in a good spot. They're facing up here, and I really don't know what their damage is. But let's go ahead and I'm going to try and charge here with this infantry. Since they're wounded, I'm going to try and rush them up. So let me end his activation. Highlight him. 8 action points. We're going to get pretty close to him. So we're going to go this way. And I got to keep my facing towards him. I'm trying to come around here. Oh, the enemy's moving somebody up. Alright, so here we go. It's going to take 2 action points to move here. That's not going to be enough to really... Oh, he tried to attack as a defense. I don't have... I've got 2 APs. Check this out. I'm going to spend 1.
Ja, Herr Hauptmann.
So now he has 3 action points, which is enough to shoot. And we're going to go ahead and fire. It's only a 27% chance to hit. But, you know, let's do it. Rolled a 3. Oops, one of the dice got stuck. So we'll just accept it. Alright. He's used up movement. He's used up. Alright, let's move the machine gun up. So I gotta end his activation. Move this guy up here. Here. So again, I have a nice open commanding field of view. Now I'm out of action points. So I have 5 action points left, so I can shoot twice. We're just gonna roll the dice. Okay, that was my dice aren't coming out of the tower very well today. That's a 5. That misses. So we're gonna try one more time here. Fire. Oh man, it's even worse. Snake eyes. Terrible. Alright. He's only got 1 action point left. Again, I don't want to move him out of the cover of the trees just yet. So we're going to go ahead and end his activation. Now all my folks have done something. I'm out of caps, no cards to spend. So what I'm going to do is just end my turn. Alright, so that's the end of the second turn. We're starting the third turn. So I have to hold out all 5 turns here. Now I got reinforcements. I have a Pioneer squad coming in. So I'm going to put a Pioneer squad right here. So that was my reinforcement. Now these guys are short range. This number here in the middle is how far they can shoot, and it's only a 3. I didn't point that out earlier, but he has to get really close to folks. But he has a 4 when it comes to attacking infantry, and a 3 when it comes to attacking armor. Since there's no armor, I just got to move him in close to, say, sneak up and kill these guys. See, my infantry here didn't see them before because of the woods, but I can see him with that guy. Yeah, it looks like they got a flamethrower here. Picture shows. Alright, so now I have to decide because of the way AP points are spent. Either I activate him and try to eliminate this machine gun unit, or turn to face this threat. But let me tell you, machine guns, they got the same firepower. It's not a very good machine gun. But we're going to try and kill it. I'll move Pioneers up later. I'm going to activate the rifles.
Jawohl!
What we're going to do is we're actually going to move into this hex. And I'm going to turn and face this infantry. Now, when you do... Now, right now, these 2 guys are in the same hex. So this is going to be hand-to-hand combat. And when you do hand-to-hand combat, you get a +4 bonus to your attack roll, and you attack their rear defense. And so they have an 11. So this actually is a really good chance to hit. Now, I have a 58% base chance to hit, but I only get 1 attack because I've got 3 AP left, and it takes 3 to attack. I'm going to go ahead and bump up my chance of killing them with 2 action points, command caps. That gives me an 83% chance to kill these guys. So I'm going to go ahead. I want them dead. So I rolled an 8. I'm pretty sure that's enough. They're dead. Now, even though I'm playing the board game version as closely as possible, it gives me those percentage odds of hitting. Even if I didn't have the percentage odds, I would still just look at the counters to see what my advantages are. I'd roll the dice anyway. 2, I had +4 for being in the same hex. The defender does get the bonus of the terrain they're in, so the defense of the woods was a 2. That would have negated my base firepower, but the +4 for being in the same hex is a good bonus with my +2 caps. I definitely was going to try and do it. Now, the Soviet Union unit here, they moved in next to me for an adjacent combat, but they're facing the Pioneer squad, which is not a bad idea because this unit has expended all of its caps. It can't do anything, so I can't attack them from behind, and if the Pioneer unit comes down to fight them, I'd be attacking their front value. It's not a terrible strategy for them, but they used up all their action points to get here. So let's see what else I've got. Now I got these guys that are exposed in the open, and that's not good. So what I want to do for sure is to move them up into the protection of the woods. Now he's got 8 action points. I've got 7 left. It only took me 1 action point to move in there. Okay, I'm not upset. But now I can shoot. Now this only gives me a 2% chance. They have a terrible anti-infantry value here, so I pretty much am gonna have to roll 12s in order to hit. I think what I'll do is I'm gonna pass. I'm gonna see what they do. Now if you delay, oh, that wasn't what I wanted to do. Use up all of his action points. In the board game, you can delay. It costs you 1 action point to delay. It's like just a pass. Then the opponent can do something, and you can delay. That way you can wait to see where the enemy is moving to. Well, they didn't move forward at all. They brought someone else up, but I used up all my action points, so that did not work out the way I wanted. Okay, so now I've got infantry coming, and my infantry suck. So what I'm going to have to do is race to get some machine guns here into defensive position. So I'm going to bring this light machine gun.
Achtung!
Let's get them down here. Uh-oh. Okay, just let me someone move. Oh man, I rolled low for action points. Get here. Whew. Okay, that used up all his action points to get into the woods, but see, now I can maybe defend a little bit. I'm gonna bring this machine gun unit. He only rolled 5 action points. That sucks. But we're gonna race down here as well. So they've packed up their gun, and we are racing. Alright, then I've got my Pioneer unit.
Soldaten!
He only got 5 action points. Alright, let's bring the pain. Okay. Yeah, let's do it.
Weiter!
Because watch this. I technically don't have enough points to attack. But I have 1 action point left, so I'm going to give him 1
Ja,
action
Herr
point,
Hauptmann.
which now means he can attack. Now I'm adjacent, which gives me like a +3. The unit still gets +2 defense for the woods, but I have an attack score of 4, and I'm going to burn a couple action points. So that actually brings my odds of hitting up to about 83%. We're going to do it. We're going to flame this guy out of the woods. Roll good. Oh, this might not work out. I rolled a 6. That might not be enough. Is it? It was enough. Woohoo! Now again, I can't tell what damage has happened to them, but it was worth it. Now see, here's what I can do. It takes 2 action points to fire. I have no other units left to really do anything right now. Well, I'm going to see if I can kill this unit. That way I can bring all my troops kind of down to defend this point. So what I'm going to do is activate 2 of my
Ja,
command
Herr
action
Hauptmann.
points.
Ja, Herr Hauptmann.
That will bring this unit back to the fresh side, so I can have enough to shoot. Now it's a 58% chance to hit. I've got 1 cap left, so I'm going to give him 1 bonus
Ja,
roll
Kamerad.
point. And let's roll. 7. Well, oh, I forgot to turn the camera on. Let me hit the attack button. I rolled a 7 here. Let's see if that's enough to damage him.
Gebt ihnen Saures, Männer.
Alright, it was enough to take it out. Ooh. Okay, that was bad. The Russians played a sniper card, which causes you to lose a random amount of action points, but since all my caps were spent, my side is completely done. I have nothing left that I can do. So this is where we are right now at the end of turn 3. I've got some German units here in place to set up a nice defensive perimeter to protect the crossroads here. And I do see at least 1 Russian unit moving up. So we're going to go ahead and pass my turn. Here comes the start of turn 4. Let's see. Starting turn 4, Germans win initiative. Now I got some cards here. This allows a unit to take an action for free. Allows any unit to take 1 action at no cost. Rally, if I had someone who was damaged, I could try to rally for free. And then mines, removes all action points from the selected enemy unit. Alright, now here's the thing. The only problem is I don't have like a line of sight tool that I'm aware of that just lets me check like from one hex to another. But I honestly think this little copse of trees here blocks line of sight from this machine gun unit to that guy. So I'm not going to activate him. He's in a good spot to defend if somebody comes through or comes behind. But my machine guns are really, really effective. So I'm going to bring this guy up. So I'm going to activate him.
Achtung!
He's got 7 action points. So I'm going to move him ahead for 1 action.
Nur ein Kratzer.
Now see, right here, the Russian player used his activation to shoot at my infantry here. So I'm going to move him up 1 more.
Brown Katze.
And now he's used up all his action points. See, the thing is the Russian player, look, it takes 4 action points to fire. So these action points, I tell you what, if you really want to get a good feel for the game and what the numbers mean, go to the Academy Games website and read the designer notes from the downloadable rules. And they do a great job. Like if you go through the rules, you'll see designer notes. And they'll say that these numbers, they don't just represent the technical aspects of the weapons, but they represent things like training, how well the equipment supports sustained rates of fires. It's a very narrative system. So this high number, 4 APs to fire, represent that early on in the war that the Russian units weren't as well trained as their German counterparts and that their equipment might not have been as good. So a lot of times they only get to shoot once or twice on an activation, whereas you take one of these German light machine guns, the LMG, the 34 here, 2 activations to fire. That means it's a well-trained unit, well supplied, augmented by your action points that you roll. So even if I roll kind of low, their training still allows them to make the best usage of the points given them. I'm going to be able to shoot twice into this hex. Now I only have a 16% chance to hit. I'm going to augment that because currently I don't see any other Russian units on the board. So this is kind of like the last one that I'm aware of. So I'm going to go ahead and
Ja, Kamerad.
give him some caps to spend here. That only brings his chance to hit up to a 41%. And it says at the top here I need to roll at least an 8. So let's roll. I rolled a 6. There's no point to really cheat. I mean, I could easily flip it over, but you know, that's cheating, then what's the point? So I'll accept minus. Ah, there's the other pesky one. Now they're both at 16%. I mean, I could shoot at either one, but since this guy is the fresh unit, see, he's already used up for the turn, I'm going to go ahead and maybe damage him and kind of interrupt his chances of doing something. So I'm going to add some caps to my bonus attack, and I'm going to shoot. So again, I need an 8. I rolled a 7. Came close. See, they had enough points to fire back. See, they still got some points to move or something because they haven't got their little bar that tells they've been used up. So here's the thing. It takes 2 action points to fire. I've only got 1 action point left. I'm going to use an extra point.
Ja, Herr Hauptmann.
One of my command points in order to shoot. And we're going to bump it up the chance to hit again. Oh, man. Didn't go my way. Wow, this guy had a lot of action points because he's been able to shoot, move, and he's still not used up. But he is all used up. All right. Okay, we're going to move this. Okay, we're going to end him. I've only got 1 action point left. Rally. Oh, you know what I could do? Check it out. I'm going to highlight him for a moment. I'm going to play this card that allows you 1 action at no cost. I'm going to let him attack. Now, I have no bonus. I've got 1 bonus point to raise it up a little bit. I know it's risky, but I need a 9. Come on. Roll good for me. Oh, man. Accept the roll. 5. Darn. We put a lot of firepower into that guy, but he shrugged it off. Alright, well, totally done with that guy for now. So we're going to activate my Pioneer unit. He ended up getting 7 action points. Okay, not bad. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down here. Now, see, this is where I've read some folks have said this can be gamey, is because he's used, he can't really shoot back as an opportunity action because he's on his used side. He can't use any action points. But that's where saving like your caps points, which allow you to activate a unit that's been used up, if he had caps, he could activate this unit that could fire in defense. If he has no caps, see, I spent all my caps on the offense. I saved none for defense. So his troops, if he had fresh troops, they could just march right on up here, and I really couldn't do anything because my men are all hunkered down. They're not prepared to fight. But I'm going to try and do the same thing here. I got to be careful because I'm going to spend movement points to get up here, but I want to get adjacent so I have a really good chance of killing them. So I'm going to move one. And I'm going to move one more.
Schneller!
Now the only problem is it's going to take 2 of my 3 points left, so I only get 1 shot here. So I'm going to attack. I rolled a 7. I think that might be enough to hit. They're damaged. I got 1 action point left. I can't really do anything with it, so we'll end his activate. I have no caps to reactivate him or anything, so we'll end it. The only thing is, if I don't kill this unit on the computer's next turn, he has a chance to rally, which would possibly remove that damage effect. Uses a lot of his action points, but he might survive. Okay, so let's activate this guy. Oh, he's got 8 action points, so check it out. We're going to move through the woods here. I'm going to try and not use all my action points moving.
Seitenangriff!
I got 3 action points left. Takes 3 to attack, so we're going to attack. Now it's against their front value. Gives me a 58% chance to hit. So I need to roll like a 7. I believe this would be about a 7 I'd have to roll. Oh, the mother load. Now here's the thing. If you surpass an opponent's defense value by 4 points or more, you outright kill him. So let's see if this was enough to outright kill it. Well, it's going to die anyway because it already had a damage. So it don't matter. Not as cool as I thought it would be. Now I honestly don't know how many units they have left. They're definitely down to 1. Yeah, I still have 2 units I can move. So what I'm going to do, I don't know how many, I'm going to activate him. So let's end his activation, activate this guy. Only 7 action points, so it's going to take 1, 2, I can shoot once. Let's do it, let's charge. We're moving in for the kill here. Only gives me a 27% chance to hit because they're not as well off as my light machine guns. Come on, roll high again. Give me another 12. Well, an 8. I don't think that's enough to do it.
Daneben.
Yeah, it's a miss. And I only have 2 action points left. What I could do is move them into a defensive position here in the woods, so at least they have a little bit of protection. And now, let's end his activation. I got this machine gun unit here.
Jawohl!
I might not get too many chances to attack, but I'm going to move here. And the only reason why is because I want to be in a position where this guy is like surrounded. 16%, I have no caps to augment it with, so we're just going to roll the dice. It says I need a 10. And I roll a 6. So that's a miss. Now check this out. Oh, that's a rally. Okay, never mind. We're done. All my units are done. We've got the crossroads. He's got 1. He might be able to kill somebody. We're on the final turn. And I win initiative. I don't know if it's set to where I win initiative every time, but I'll take it. I haven't lost any units yet. That's good. Alright, the Pioneer's pretty strong. I want to see if I can move them up for an assault here. So we're going to activate them first.
Jawohl!
He's got 9 action points. That's awesome. So we're going to move here. See, he's attacking. I want him to focus his points there. That's fine. So we're going to move here. That takes 2.
Nur ein Kratzer.
And now we're going to move into this hex and initiate combat.
Los!
Now I have 4 action points. I can do 2 attacks. I'm going to augment
Ja,
that.
Kamerad.
Give myself a 91% chance. I'm going to put 2 caps
Ja,
in
Kamerad!
because I want to see if I can overkill them here. All right, let's see. Let's blow these guys up in one attack. I rolled a 4. That might be enough to hit, but it might not be enough to kill. They're damaged. Let's
Ja,
do the caps
Kamerad.
one more time. One more shot. All right, that's a 10.
Gebt ihn in Saurus,
Definitely
Männer.
done. All right, so his activation is over. Now, I think that was the last guy. Unless there's a hidden unit. So I'm just gonna end my turn because up here in the upper right, that shows my victory points. So I'm already at 8. The Russian player had 1 because he had taken possession of the crossroads for 1 turn. So I'm just gonna end my turn here. And that's pretty much it. Killed 5 units. Had the victory hex for 4 turns essentially, so that gives me 9 points altogether. The Soviet took the hex once, so that I gave him 1 point. So I pretty much took care of that one. So that's pretty much the game in a nutshell. So as far as me coming back to the computer game, the demo doesn't have a whole lot in terms of the gameplay because you have just a few scenarios. But if I was to pick this up, I definitely would buy Storms of Steel because I like the more tanks and stuff like that. But by making the game play like the board game version, it just makes this so much better than, I think, in my opinion, than the default rules that come with it. And I think it's the default rules and the setup with like the 3D terrain and the 3D units and things that kind of turned people off because they were looking for the board game experience. Well, it is here. You can put it that way. It might not have been that way at first, but if they've added that through patches and stuff, you definitely get the board game experience now. The thing is, some folks might ask, because this is something I asked, why would I not use the persistent APs? What you just saw there, the APs stick. You stay activated on one unit, and if I go and activate a different unit, then the unit I had activated loses its APs for the rest of that turn. Like, he's done. So if he had 4 APs left and I moved on to another unit to move it, he would have lost those 4 APs. That's potentially lost movement and firing. In persistent APs that come with the computer game, it will track those APs for every single unit, and you can switch from unit to unit to unit. So I can move with this guy, I can move with another guy, and go back to the other guy and still have APs. That might be useful for scenarios where you have a very limited amount of time and you're really trying to take control of your units and strategically move them about the field. That could work, because if you only get like 5 turns, some of these matches, they have a lot of units and it's a lot of victory points to try and take over, and 5 turns goes quick. But to help you, if you don't want to use the persistent APs because you want to keep the core of the rules from the board game, you can use your grouped movement, where units that are adjacent can fire together and move together. They use the AP value of the lowest unit that was rolled, but it lets you move groups of folks at a time, so you don't have to worry about moving this guy, jump down here to move this guy. You can move them together. So there are some things that help with the limited AP. But try it out. Give the demo a whirl. If you're not quite sure what to expect from a board game to computer game, here's the settings that I have in case you want to try and replicate this yourself. If you go to the rules, I put variable action points, 3 dice 6. This actually came out as an optional rule in their I forget what it's called, like the Polish expansion. It was like the third expansion to the game if you look at their website. And 3 dice 6. So what it does, the computer rolls 3 dice, keeps the highest roll and the lowest roll, and that's your APs. Difficulty is normal. I really don't know what you get playing at the different difficulty levels. That's just the default I play with. Foot unit, cautious movement. There is an optional rule in the board game that when you have a unit that moves out in the open, if they use cautious movement, it costs extra movement points, but they get a defensive bonus in case someone shoots at them. In the game, I left it in, it's optional, but if you hold the control key down and then move a unit out into the open, that gives them their cautious movement. I should probably use that more, but in that scenario there, I was just running. Race to get to that crossroad. The random quality. This is not in the board game because it would be hard to track for all your units, so I leave it off because it's not in the board game. But this would actually let you set your units up to where some of them might be green or veteran. Same with the Soviet side when you play against them. So that might make some units stronger, some units weaker. I leave random quality off. Not to say I would not use it at some point, but just to replicate that base game experience, leave it off. And then here's the APs, classic APs. You have the persistent that allows your APs to carry from activation to activation until they're all used up, and it doesn't matter what unit you activate. Classic, that's the board game experience right there. Then for, I don't know if this will let me set the maps here, the gameplay. Yeah, it doesn't really show you here. Let me pop out of this for just a second here. What I did prior to popping into the game, just to tell it that I want to do the classic board game version, when you open it up, this is like the launcher for the game, and you can choose 3D maps with 3D units and persistent APs, and that's like the default of the game. Or you can go with 2D maps, 2D counters, and classic APs, and that's the board game experience right there. That's what I set up. Once you get into the game, though, you have to turn the camera so it's top down, so you're not at that weird angle, but top down, and then you're looking straight down at the board. Now this 2D giant maps and 2D counters, classic APs, this is kind of blending the 3D game with the map. The giant maps, what that does is it actually puts hills on the map. It's kind of cool. So if you play a scenario that has hills, then it's easier to see where the hills are. So as you're moving units, you know, it's kind of cool. It's kind of you still get your flat counters, but the map is 3D. It doesn't show the trees generated, if I remember right, but it shows the map contours for hills and mountains. It's kind of cool. The game manual, this is different than what you get from the Academy Games website for the board game. This definitely tells you how to play the computer game, but you don't get all of the editor notes, all of the game designer notes. So I go to the Academy Games. The guy who wrote the game, well, the main author of it, because there's people who play it, test it, and stuff like that. But Uwe Eckert, and his designer notes and why they did things the way they are make a whole lot of sense, and it really gives you an insight as to why the game plays the way it does. I think it's great. So I would recommend going to the Academy Games website, download the rules for like Awakening the Bear 2nd edition or the Storms of Steel. You don't have to read the rules necessarily, but just go in and read all the designer notes that explain why the rules play out. Give yourself the 2D maps, even the giant maps would be fine, but the 2D maps, 2D counters, classic APs, and boom, you've got the full board game experience. So yeah, I'm still would like to have a demo of the Lock and Load board game experience on the computer, but for those who have been curious about this game specifically, Conflict of Heroes, and you may have read some negative things about the 3D graphics and stuff like that, and you want that board game experience replicated, it's here. You just got to set it up right. Anyway, that's all the time I got for today. Thank you for watching. Leave some comments, and if you have played both of these, leave some thoughts and opinions. I'm really have been curious about Lock and Load. I've got like the Vassal modules, but I've not had a decent copy of the rules or someone to really teach me. And it just seems a lot more complicated than the Conflict of Heroes. So I've been intimidated by the thought of even purchasing it for the computer. Even though the computer handles all the rules, with Conflict of Heroes, I understand the mechanics that I can play the computer game just fine because I understand the mechanics. I don't feel that comfortable with lock and load. So, I mean, if you've played them both, please leave your thoughts. If you have questions about the board game, ask me, because Conflict of Heroes, that's something I really enjoy. So, we will talk to you later.